I caught my wife kissing another man after she said I couldn't live without her. Now she's begging and I'm done. I'm 32. I worked hard, paid the bills on time, and made sure my wife had everything she wanted. I never thought I would end up writing a story like this, because I honestly believed that the woman I married loved me in the same way that I loved her. For 7 years, I was convinced that we were a team, that no matter what life threw at us, we would face it together. I was wrong. The night I discovered the truth, I was supposed to be working late. My boss had mentioned a meeting, but it was canceled at the last minute. Instead of going out somewhere, I decided to head home earlier than usual. I thought maybe my wife would be happy to see me sooner. Maybe we could share dinner and talk like we used to when our marriage was still new. But the moment I walked into the house, I felt something was off. The lights were dim, and the living room door was half open. I stepped forward quietly, and that was when my entire world fell apart. Right there, in our living room, my wife was sitting close to another man. At first, my brain refused to process it. But then he leaned over and kissed her like it was the most natural thing in the world, and she kissed him back without hesitation. My body froze in place. It was like my heart stopped beating. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I stood there in silence for a few moments, waiting for her to pull away, waiting for some kind of explanation, but she never did. She looked comfortable with him. She looked happy, and that hurt more than anything I could ever describe. When she finally noticed me standing there, her eyes went wide, but not with guilt. It was annoyance, almost like she was upset that I had caught her, not that she had betrayed me. My mind flashed back to a fight we had a few weeks earlier. During that argument, she had stared at me coldly and said, "You couldn't live without me. You'd never survive if I left you." At the time, I thought she was just lashing out in anger. I even brushed it off later, joking about how dramatic she was being. But in that moment, standing in our own living room while she sat beside another man, I realized she had meant it. She truly believed I was so dependent on her that I would never leave, no matter what she did. The man she was with stood up quickly and mumbled something about leaving. He didn't even look at me. He just grabbed his jacket and walked out the door like nothing happened. I wanted to chase him down, but my anger wasn't really about him. It was about her, about the woman I loved choosing to humiliate me in the worst way possible. When the door shut behind him, she finally spoke. "It's not what you think," she said, but the words felt empty. How could it not be what I thought? I saw them with my own eyes. My hands were shaking, my heart was racing, and I could barely find the strength to speak. All I managed to say was, "How long?" She didn't answer immediately. She just sat there with her arms crossed, like I was the one causing problems. Finally, she said, "Does it matter?" That was when something in me snapped. For years, I had tried to be the perfect husband. I paid for vacations, bought her gifts, and supported every little dream she claimed she had. And yet, in that moment, she looked at me like I was disposable, like I was a fool for believing our marriage meant something. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at her and said calmly, "You're right about one thing. It doesn't matter. Because you're not my wife anymore." Her face twisted in shock, and for the first time that night, she looked nervous. Maybe she finally realized that I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fight for someone who had already chosen to throw me away. I went straight to the bedroom, grabbed a bag, and began packing my clothes. She followed me, trying to explain, saying things like, "It was just a mistake," and "You're overreacting." But I ignored her. Every word out of her mouth felt like another knife in my chest. I couldn't even look at her anymore. By the time I finished packing, she was crying. She reached for my arm and whispered, "Please don't leave. You can't survive without me. You know you can't." But the truth was, I realized in that moment that I could. I could survive just fine. In fact, I would be better off without someone who believed I was weak. I stood there in the doorway, watching the scene unfold, and it felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. For a moment, I couldn't even move. The woman I had shared my life with, the one I had trusted with every piece of my heart, was acting like I was already gone. She didn't even look shocked or guilty when she finally noticed me standing there. Instead, she rolled her eyes, like I was the one interrupting something normal. That expression on her face burned into my memory. Cold, detached, and almost annoyed that I had walked in on the truth. I finally managed to speak, though my voice came out shaky and weak. I asked her, "What's going on here?" as if the answer wasn't already clear. The other man shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes, but she didn't flinch. She crossed her arms and said flatly, "Don't start acting like you own me. You don't control where I go or who I'm with." Those words felt like a knife to my chest. For years I had thought we were building a future together, and in a few cold sentences, she made me feel like I was nothing more than an inconvenience in her life. The room felt heavy, and my hands started to tremble. I could feel anger rising in my chest, but more than anger, there was a crushing sense of betrayal. I thought about all the late nights I had worked to make sure we were comfortable, all the times I had put her happiness first, and all the plans we had talked about for the future. In that moment, I realized none of it mattered to her the way it had mattered to me. She was already somewhere else, in a different world, one where I no longer existed. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at her and said quietly, "You made your choice." She didn't answer. She didn't even try to stop me as I turned around and walked out of the house. My heart was racing, my mind spinning with 1,000 questions, but one thought kept repeating itself over and over. If she could look me in the eye and still do this, then she never loved me the way I loved her. Walking out that door was the hardest step I had ever taken, but I knew deep down it was the right one. I deserved better than begging someone to stay faithful to me. I deserved better than being treated like a backup plan. And as painful as it was, I also knew she would one day regret underestimating me. The first few days after walking away were a blur. My chest felt heavy all the time, and nights were the worst. I would lie awake wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly, replaying that scene in my head again and again. But with every sunrise, the pain started to change. It shifted from heartbreak into clarity. I realized I had given her everything, and she had chosen to throw it away. That wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of hers. It didn't take long before the messages started coming in. At first, she sent short, sharp words like, "We need to talk." Then they turned into longer, desperate pleas. She said she had made a mistake, that she was confused, that she didn't want to lose me. She even showed up at my door once, crying, saying she realized no one would ever love her like I did. But by then, something in me had shifted. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. The trust was gone, and without trust, there was nothing left to save. I stayed calm. I didn't shout, I didn't break down, and I didn't fall for her tears. I simply told her, "You made a choice that night, and I made mine too. There's no going back." Watching her face sink as she realized I meant every word was painful, but also liberating. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Life slowly started to move forward. I focused on myself, on my work, and on rebuilding the parts of me she had broken down. And with each step forward, I felt stronger. I learned that sometimes, walking away is the most powerful thing you can do. I didn't need to get revenge or prove anything to her. My peace was enough. She's still out there, probably regretting the day she decided to cross that line. But that's no longer my problem. My life is better without the lies, without the games, and without the constant feeling that I wasn't enough. Because the truth is, I was always enough. She just couldn't see it. And as I closed that chapter for good, one thing became clear. Sometimes losing someone you thought you couldn't live without is exactly what teaches you how strong you really are.